eat some without asking me. That's, I want to let you know too, we broadcast on Facebook, but you're not on it. If you don't want to be on it, let us know, but we don't do the crowd, we just do up to the front. Hey, let's be optimistic. We have a good sense of humor here. You'll find that too. All right. Welcome to First Universalist in New Madison, Ohio on this nice fall. I guess it's not technically fall, but it's a nice cool day. We still have our fans running. I'm not running the swamp cooler because that's not necessary at this particular time. Do we have any announcements? Okay. Next week, Mike is going to bring us a presentation on the transition in England with the new king, Charles III. That should be interesting to watch. It's interesting to watch the reaction of the people in England. They're showing the people lining the streets with all the flowers. They are still really attached to their queen, and she was a pretty decent person, I think, to be attached to. But the rest of the family is not quite carrying their share of the load, I think. There's been some problems down the line, so we'll see what happens with that. Today is 9/11, so we are doing a slight memorial to, as we do every year, to 9/11. And in relation to that, what I'll be speaking on, kind of disjointedly, as is my usual practice, the value of life. What value we put on life and what we do with that value. All right, our prelude is Faraway Places. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. Faraway Places. Good way to start. Can you hear me?
A little bit of a delay there.
A little bit of an echo. That's what we're going to see if there's a problem with that. So.
Yeah.
All right. Cello sliding. Be turned down. In a World Filled with Hate by Douglas John Traverso. In a world filled with the darkness of ignorance, let us bring the light of reason. In a world filled with the darkness of despair, may we share the light of hope. In a world filled with the darkness of hate, let us shine the light of love. Our opening hymn is 361. Enter, rejoice, and come in, which is a good pick because I'm using for our presentation today, I'm using my wife Tara's, some of her scripture, and some of the things she talked about at New Carlisle. So we'll see how that works out.
me start.
Yes. And not a really happy day, but unhappy occurrences and unhappy experiences do not make your life unhappy. You choose how you want your life to be. And that is a choice we each make every day when we get up. Our affirmation is a prayer on the anniversary of September 11th by Gary Kowalski. He's one of my favorite pastors in the Unitarian Church, Unitarian Universalist. We gather on this beautiful morning, the anniversary of a day painful to remember, but impossible to forget. We remember all the heroes and heroines of that day, the firefighters, the emergency responders who demonstrated such courage in the midst of crisis. We remember the innocents who perished, our friends and neighbors, and the thousands of strangers who were victims of random violence. We remember knowing for a moment that we were connected to each precious life, to the survivors and to those who died with a bond of shared humanity, that the forces of hate could never break. We remember the voices that counseled peace, even as our nation prepared for war, and we raise our voices still against fanaticism in all its forms, against jihad, against militarism, against racism and religious intolerance, praying that the conflagration of that day might even now cast a more gentle light, leading to a future where all people can live in freedom and without fear. All right, I think we can take that to heart. And as an example of that, has anyone seen this picture on the internet? This takes place in Provo, Utah, the Church of Latter-day Saints. There was, as you can see in the background, an LGBTQ plus pride walk that was being attacked and basically assaulted by the onlookers, both college students, BYU college students, and just people from the community. So these kind people came up with the Angels of Protection. If you can see, they have white sheets on a stick, one on each arm and one around their neck, to prevent the missiles, the spit, the water, all the tomatoes, the things that were being thrown at the marchers, to protect them from all of that and actually shield them from some of the angry faces that they would be seeing. Tremendous idea. I think that's something that would bear repeating. It appeals to our Christian sense of angels of protection, and it also appeals to our sense of fairness and decency, and the sense that we are allowed to speak our minds in this country as long as it doesn't infringe on the rights of others. Okay, our children's story is something I do every year, and I hope you don't get tired of it, but I never do.
Every year, every week.
Every year. I do this particular one every year,
This is good.
if it'll play for me.
Oh, yeah.
Horses I do every week, but not these two horses. This is the Clydesdale commercial that played the month after the September 11th, and it only played one time online, but so many people copied it that it stays there. Universalism, I think, has acted in the sense, the common sense and the common support of the country without trying to take advantage. You know that it's Budweiser that did that, but they're not pushing Budweiser, they're not pushing beer, they don't even say drink it responsibly to protect themselves legally. So that's, Horses and I are close, as you know, for every week we'll bring that in, but this is one of the ones that really touches me. Number one, because of the remembrance of 9/11 in the quiet and respectful way. Okay, joys and concerns.
Tim, as you already mentioned, certainly a day of remembrance for Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth of England. One has heard lots on TV and through other media, but I guess in an ever-changing world, divisive, often uncertain world, for over 70 years she was a voice of service, of kindness to others, and genuine care. And so I'd like again to remember it.
And if you watched any of the things that are going on, she was a pretty remarkable person and exemplary of that British stay calm and keep your chin up. And also the sense of service. She never lorded it, pardon the pun, but she never lorded it over her subjects. Before she was queen, when she was a young girl, she actually worked as a truck driver, an ambulance driver during the war. She was born before the war, World War II that is, and actually served her country as a truck driver, which all of the British family, the British royalty, have been in the military in one aspect or another, and you have to give them respect for that, and not only in the military as a protected role. Most of them have served in the active military where they were actually I'm sure they were extra protected, but they were still in places where there was danger and where they could have been injured. An example we don't see much here anymore. Since we started the volunteer army, it's the poor and the destitute, the people who have no other future, who need an education, who are volunteering for the military, and I think that has been possibly a big mistake. Right, the Queen and 9/11, we'll always have a candle for 9/11 on 9/11. We will never forget that. And we'll never forget the response that happened to that, and whether we support it or don't support it, where we ended up in Afghanistan for 20 years, the longest war ever. Any personal? I think the virus is still with us. The numbers are going down, but it's still very effective. New Carlisle, where my wife preaches, has 3 active people, but nobody else, as far as I know and as far as she knows, has had these symptoms. My wife had a headache, aches and pains, but she took the test twice in 3 consecutive days, or 1 day and then 3 days later, and the test was negative. So we're hoping that was just a summer cold. If not, it was a very mild case. And I don't have any symptoms, so it must not have been transmissible. Yes?
It's also light a candle, excuse me, for Jeanette Burns, a member of our congregation and continues to be for so many years now at the Brookhaven home in Greenville. And I did take our card up to her. I didn't take it up until yesterday morning, and I guess she had taken it. Her family picked her up for an outing, so I left it with a bouquet of flowers. I certainly will visit her sometime this week to touch base, but let's all continue to think about Jeanette and wish her the very best.
And I've called Gordon like 5 times, and I don't know what the deal is. He never answers his phone, and there's no answering machine. I talked to the receptionist at whatever Friendship Village, and she said, yeah, he's there, and he's out walking all the time and active. So I'm going to be going down to Dayton, I think this week, to pick up some parts and supplies. I'm just going to stop in and see if I see him, and if not, I'll leave a note on his door, or say that we're trying to get a hold of him. As I mentioned before, if we want to do for Jeanette or for Gordon, if somebody wants to record themselves on their cell phone and send me the message, or record it on my phone, I will play it for Gordon, and we can do it for anybody that would be interested in any of our shut-ins. And then the other thing is, if they are willing, maybe we could record a message from them. And if they don't mind, we'll go ahead and put it on Facebook to let everybody know that they are hale and hearty, or at least alive, upright, walking, and warm. And we'll try to increase our communication and our connection with people who have been here for generations and generations but aren't able to make it anymore. That's part of what it means to be in community. Okay, we have our sunflowers, and we actually have some live ones. I bought live ones and forgot to bring them, as usual, with everything else that I do. Ukraine is dragging on and dragging on. The nuclear power plant is now, they've lost all their outside electricity, so my understanding is they're trying to use the internal diesel-powered generators to shut the plant down. The Russians are in control of this, and nobody knows what's going on, but if one of those plants melts down, we're going to have a catastrophe of monumental proportions. The one change is, and it's kind of interesting, and I do not support war or violence in any shape or form, but I have to kind of smile. The Ukrainians threatened and made a feint to the south to take back some of the land in Crimea where the Russians had taken over like 4 or 5 years ago. And the Russians moved troops and supplies down there to protect themselves, so the Ukrainians turned around and attacked in the northeast, or Kharkiv, I think is the name of the town. They've advanced, that was their real attempt. They were just doing a fake down to the south, and they actually attacked in the northeast and have moved 30 miles into Russian-held territory and taken back a couple, 3 or 4 crossroad villages, which cuts off the supply lines of the Russians. So things are not over. This is not one giant country that imposes its will on another little small country. The Ukrainians they're pretty tough people, and they're not willing to take it lying down. So they're getting tons of support, billions and billions of dollars from the U.S. and from other countries, and they need that support. Lou is working on, as a representative of our church, to come up with some supplies or ideas. We don't know yet whether it's going to be just sending money, whether it's going to be sending materials. I think the last thing we got, didn't he say they were collecting materials? I'm not sure. I have questions about that. A container, they say now, a container costs $45,000. To me, there's materials in Europe all over the place. We'll just send them money and they can buy stuff in Poland or Bulgaria or Romania, help those people out by selling and help the Ukrainians out by buying, and not waste $45,000 shipping a bunch of clothes that nobody wants over to Ukraine on a ship. It's going to take 2 months to get there anyway. So we'll see how that works. The other possibility is that there are Ukrainian refugees. We have, well, I guess I'll have to say I have extra refrigerators, extra stoves, I have extra appliances, extra furniture. I would be more than willing, and I think we could, as a group, could help furnish a place if we had Ukrainian refugees that needed a place. So Lou is in charge of that, and we'll see how that goes. Be aware that is in the upcoming mix. Okay, that's the Ukraine. Anything else? All right, we light this one last final candle for those thoughts, those prayers, those fears, those desires, which you cannot speak out loud, and maybe you can't even admit to yourself. Our goal, our attempt, our desire is to be a community that supports anyone in need and to provide a place for. Sometimes it is as important to be a giver, to be someone who contributes to the community as much as it is to be someone who receives from the community. So that is what we are trying to create in New Madison at the First Universalist Church, is a community. Okay. Our message is this one. I'm going to start out with But There Is Light. That's what the translation is of the German. This is Dietrich Bonhoeffer, if anybody knows who he is. He was a German pastor that wrote a lot about discipleship and the value of human life, and that is where we are kind of going to go in many directions, but we'll see how it works. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was against Hitler in the 1930s and 39 and 40. He emigrated to the United States where he was safe, but he felt his duty was to return, and he was a theologian at a university in Germany. He felt it was his duty to return and stand up against the Nazis and proclaim his opposition to the Nazi theology, the Nazi use of concentration camps. And so he did that publicly. In Germany, after Hitler took over the chancellery, every person, man, woman, and child in Germany had to speak a loyalty oath. They had to proclaim their loyalty, and that is partially what the German salute is proclaiming your loyalty not to the country, not to the Constitution, but to the person, the individual himself, Hitler. Many good Christians refused to do that. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was one. He also was a member of a group of Christians who opposed Hitler. What happened was that group of Christians, if you remember, there was an assassination attempt on Hitler. Bonhoeffer was connected to those people. He may have carried messages, but the history that I read thinks that nobody knew, that he did not know they were going to assassinate Hitler. He was a pacifist. He did not believe in war. He refused to, when he was drafted into the military, he refused to go to the military. And he stood on the street corner and he stood in his church and proclaimed the need for pacifism and the need for nonviolence. As a consequence, he was put into a concentration camp, Sachsenhausen, which I had pictures I showed you before. When we were in Berlin, we visited the remnants of that camp. And then after the assassination attempt on Hitler, the response of the Nazi regime was to kill anybody even remotely connected to the people. That meant family members, brothers, sisters, children, grandparents, neighbors. Thousands of people were killed, anybody who was connected to that, and because he was known as someone who had carried messages and a peripheral member of that group, Bonhoeffer was executed, as well as members of his family. So he has a quote, I'll find it in here somewhere, that salvation is free, but discipleship can cost you your life. Salvation is free, but discipleship, and that's what we're going to talk about, is what it means to be a disciple. But first, I have to do this. This is something my wife sent me last night. It is connected, and I tried to get away from reading things because I know everybody was bored when I was doing that. I'm not a very good reader. But I have to read you this by John Pavlovitz. This applies to our country. America is broken. I'm not sure that's up for debate at this point, but let's be clear about something. Donald Trump did not break it. He didn't create anything. Not the unmasked racism so proudly parading itself down the crowded main streets, in school meetings, and on neighborhood message boards. Not the antagonistic, gun-loving bravado still opposing sensible safeguards designed to protect our most vulnerable. Not the whitewashed nationalistic fervor screaming its star-spangled supremacy into the ether. Not the strident anti-science conspiratorial arrogance refusing to take any measures to preserve life from an insidious virus. Not the homophobic, misogynistic religion being weaponized against women and the LGBTQ in church pulpits and Supreme Court rulings. He is not the genesis of these things, or of hate crimes, book bannings, mass shootings, vaccine opposition, or violent insurrection. Donald Trump did not invent any of these present national cancers. What he did was normalize them. He removed the social stigma of bigotry by wielding it openly and with a kind of perverse joy. He continually appealed to the lowest and worst of humanity until it all became commonplace. He railed against the educated and the qualified until ignorance became a badge of honor. He gave people license to celebrate the profound ugliness they once concealed for the sake of decorum. He showed gracious hospitality to the darkness residing in the recess of human hearts. Then he simply let people reveal themselves, and they have. Since the initial days of the 2016 presidential campaign, this solitary, morally bankrupt serial grifter has become a kind of moral x-ray machine for hundreds of millions of us. exposing a deeply embedded cruelty in our families, church members, friends, and neighbors that we never imagined existed. As those we live alongside and loved have embraced this monstrous man and his predatory movement, we have been forced to reckon with it all. How close and prevalent the hatred is around us, how little progress we've actually made as a nation, how little we really know the people we're sharing staff meetings, church pews, and Thanksgiving tables with. How many of our relationships were simply misinformed mythologies or marriages of convenience. And since so many placed their very identity with him from the beginning, for years now they have applauded every bit of moral filth he's generated, defended each reckless and dangerous act, doubled down on every abuse of office and every betrayal of country, ratified high crimes against the very nation they claim to want to serve. They have chosen him over the former political heroes, historically revered journalists, once beloved members of his own party, over any dissenting voice of reason or goodness, and in doing so, they have exposed their own hearts. I suppose we should be grateful. Had Donald Trump never been allowed to ascend to the highest level of the political system and not been so transparent in his contempt for decency, we might never have found ourselves here at this pivot point in our history, not merely a nation politically, but a people fractured rationally and relationally. And that's really the story here, not only for the Republican Party and evangelical church that have fallen prostrate before this barren, empty husk of a man, disgracing both their oath and their calling, but the mothers, uncles, sons, and best friends who have revealed something that we simply could not fathom before being true before he appeared. And no matter what transpires in the coming elections, or how the courts rule, or what legal ramifications come, or what legislative alterations take place, we are going to be left with this mess. The social media separations, the wordless disconnections, the silent ghostings, the expletive-laden terminations. Even after he is gone, we who remain are going to exist in an America that is grievously broken, perhaps permanently so. And as terrible as that reality is to contend with, it is still better than living in the numb sedation of ignorance and the denial that came before him, a veneer of politeness belying a terrible truth. The truth is out now. We know who we are. We have no illusions. We have all declared our allegiances and chosen our hills. Every facade has been torn down, every phony trapping of religiosity or patriotism stripped away. Now there is only the sickening, unvarnished truth of who we are as a nation, and staring at it in the raking daylight is the only chance we have to confront it and to repair it. In his craven lust for power, his absence of morality or character, his complete disregard for human life, his stratospheric narcissism, his full rejection of the law, Donald Trump has not broken America, but revealed our brokenness. He doesn't deserve our thanks, but we are indebted to him just the same. Now we have to decide how to mend ourselves. I'm not sure I agree with all of that. I'm not sure, I wouldn't prefer the age before Donald Trump, when we pretended to be polite, when we didn't post FU signs or F Biden signs in public for children to read, when we didn't yell out, let's go Brandon, in loudspeakers and at public raceways, when people had some actual decorum, when they tried to act like gentlemen and ladies. I kind of prefer that old-fashioned thing, which is one of the reasons I actually like the British. They remain polite to the end, no matter what the provocation. there any comments on that before I go on with the other stuff?
I'm just curious, you may have mentioned it, Tim, the background of the writer or the source of this.
John Pavlovitz is a writer that, and I don't know where he came from. I think he's like with Slate or one of those type of, he's in some kind of, I can look it up.
Like a news service or?
Yeah, I can look it up. Basically, she just sent me this last night at 10 o'clock, and I kind of threw it in because I was, not only do I pretty much agree with his statements, but I think his writing, his framing is just, he has words that evoke kind of a sensation in you that's more than just kind of a plodding English sentence. He has a command of the language that reaches down and kind of grabs a hold of you and brings his ideas up and kind of pushes them in your face so they really become real. I really have an appreciation for that. And if I reach my ideals and my goals, that's what you'll hear from me every week. But you're not getting that now. So, any other comments? If you disagree, please feel free. We are open to any opinions, any ideas in the Universalist Unitarian Church. We only ask that you be polite about it and use that pre-Trumpian decorum when you disagree with us. You're most welcome to come and speak on any topic, anyone is, but you still have to be polite and respectful to the people who are listening to you. Okay, now we're going to go back to the cost of being a disciple. This is Luke 14:25 through 33. Large crowds were traveling with Jesus. Turning to them, he said, "If anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yet even their own life, if they come to me and do not hate father and mother, hate wife and children, hate brothers and sisters, hate even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple." Can you imagine a leader saying that to his followers, to the people in the crowd? "And whoever does not carry their cross and follow me cannot be my disciple." Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? For if you lay the foundation and are not able to finish it, then everyone who sees it will ridicule you. They will be saying, "The person began to build and wasn't able to finish." Or suppose a king is about to go to war with another king. Won't he first sit down and consider whether he is able with 10,000 men to oppose one who is coming against him with 20,000? If he is not able, he will send a delegation while the other is still a long way off and will ask for terms of peace. In the same way, those of you who do not give up everything you have cannot be my disciples. Can you give up everything you have to be a disciple? And this is where we get, I guess I would have some disagreement on the quality of leadership. When he says if the king has 10,000 and the opposing has 20,000, he will sue for terms of peace. We all know that kings, leaders are crazy. Many of them are crazy and would take their 10,000 and throw them up against the 20,000 and sacrifice the whole 10,000 just for ego. But that's a side point. All right. Discipleship, when we were talking in these terms, the terms that Christ laid out thousands of years ago, what is the value of a life? How do you value your own life? That is the question I'm asking you to think about today and asking you to contribute. How much value do we put on the life? You might have been given the example in high school civics. Remember the lifeboat example? Capacity for 10 people and there are 11 people in the water. How do you choose which person to deny access to the lifeboat? You go by money, intelligence, who's going to be able to support the people in the lifeboat, who's the value of the people in the lifeboat, whose life is of little value and wouldn't matter if they were extinguished. Of course, and when I even in high school, I said, why can't they just take turns? Why can't the 11th person stay in the water for an hour and then another person get out and the other person can get in and they can just take turns going around the thing? So my teacher didn't think that was very smart, but I didn't understand the whole lifeboat thing anyway. So then she said, what about if you were with the Donner Party and you're in the mountains and you're starving and you don't have any food, who would you eat? You kind of have me there because you can't share eating people. I mean, I guess I could have said, yeah, you could cut off my leg, and then we'll cut off Bob's leg, and then we'll cut off Harry's leg. We could all live around, hopping around on one leg, and we could still get quite a long time on that. But I didn't think I could push my luck quite that far. So, but you get the lifeboat theory. That is discipleship. What value do we put on a life? You want to count the cost of discipleship. Another example I'll give you is, I have a long history with the Church of the Brethren. It started in the 1750s, I think, in Schwarzenau, Germany. 8 members, and this was the time of the Reformation, so the Lutheran Church and the Catholic Church were the only 2 churches you could belong to. Each one of them was very hierarchical, very rigid in what you had to do. You had to swear allegiance to the church, not to a person, although I guess in the Catholic Church you would swear allegiance to the Pope. But you had to swear allegiance and swear to follow each one of their tenets, each one of their beliefs, without question. The Church of the Brethren, these 8 disciples who decided to start, decided that their testament, their creed would be the New Testament. You would read the New Testament on your own, translate it into your own language, and you and your group would come together as a community and decide what was right and what was wrong. Right and wrong would not be handed down to you from on high. They were one of the first, the Church of the Brethren is one of the first pacifist churches, one of the first nonviolent churches, along with the Quakers and along with the Mennonites. They are the 3 primary pacifistic churches in the United States, and they are recognized as pacifist churches. If you were in the military or before the days when the draft was ended, if you were drafted, if you could go in and say that you were and prove that you were a member of the church, because obviously there are people who didn't want to fight, and if they couldn't pay a doctor to say they had bone spurs, then they were drafted. But if you could say that you were a member of a pacifistic church and had been your entire life, you were allowed to be what they call a conscientious objector. And many of these, and many of the Church of the Brethren served as medics in the war. They were not non-patriotic. They were not in support of the United States. They just refused to kill someone else, but they were more than happy to save other people's lives. And if you hear the story of medics in the American Army and Navy and Marines, they not only cared for Americans who were wounded, they cared for enemy soldiers, Germans, Japanese. There's quite a few stories of World War II in the Pacific where the Japanese were astounded because they routinely killed their prisoners, that the care they got from Americans. And you might remember Iwo Jima. When Iwo Jima was captured, the Japanese had told the civilian population that they would all be beheaded and raped and attacked and their children would be eaten. So thousands of these innocent civilians jumped off a cliff to kill themselves before they could be captured by the Americans. There are films of these women holding their kids jumping off the cliff in a 300 or 400 foot drop and then dying on the rocks below because they believed the Americans were the fiends and enemies and devils that the Japanese had told them. So that brings us back to discipleship. You have to give up all to be a disciple. As Bonhoeffer said, salvation is free, but discipleship will cost you your life. What do you value your life as? For the people who volunteered to join the military, for the people who are the jihadists, the people who are the Muslims who attacked the 19 Saudi Arabians who attacked the World Trade Centers, they gave their life in support of what they believed. How much do they value your life to give it for something else? How much do you value your life when you see the reports, even in Dayton, someone's dog falls in the river, they jump in the river to save their dog, and the dog and the person drowns. They actually gave their life trying to save their dog's life. We see many examples of people who are at the beach, and there's a child or another person drowning out in the surf. This person recklessly heads in and tries to save them, and they drown. And sometimes the other person is actually saved by the lifeguards, and the person trying to do this saving is drowned and loses their life. In America, we say we put a super high value on life, and actually, if you're a lawyer, you do. The State Department, not the State Department, the Health Department and the EPA have all come up with a value of a life when they consider damages that countries, companies, or individuals have done to the environment. I think the EPA says one American life is worth $9 million. The OSHA, Health, Human and Services, I think their value was $1 million. How did they come up with this? I am not sure. It's something that the people that work with numbers all the time come up with. Part of the way they figure it is, and it's interesting, if you're a child or an old person, your value of life is worth less. Why? Because you can't earn anything, you can't make anything, you're of no value to society. If you're a middle-aged person with a talent or a skill or an education, the value of your life is considered more because you can contribute to the society. So what is the government and what is life telling us? The value of life is monetary. What does the jihadists tell us? Money has nothing to do with the value of a life. It is what you believe in is where your value is. There's kind of a choice that you have to make. Ann Landers once said, some people know the price of everything and the value of nothing. Some people know the price of everything, but the value of nothing. That's what I want you to think about, is what is the value of your life? What is the value of another's life? What is the value of the life of an animal? Your dog, your cat, your horse. The longer it goes, when I was farming, we used to slaughter our own chickens and turkeys. We used to take our cattle to the market, or not to the slaughterhouse, which was actually kind of like here. It was one little barn where a guy slaughtered, but we would actually help with the processing the meat and cutting it up. As I told you, when I had 4-H calves, that was kind of an emotional, hard thing to do. As a professional farmer and a lifelong farmer, that was something you just did. But the longer I'm out of farming, the more the lives of other creatures become of value to me. And I'm not sure if that's just because I'm getting old and sentimental, because I don't have to do it. I still eat meat. I still like chicken, barbecue chicken at the fair, or sausage sandwiches at the Kiwanis tent. But I don't want to be the one killing them, and I don't want to see them die. So you have to make your choices, but all I ask is that you be aware of your choices and think through what your actions are going to have, what the ramifications of your actions are going to be. All right, any comments or questions? Okay, we have Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and this is the Sachsenhausen. And one thing I didn't get to was Abraham and Isaac. We'll probably talk about that before. What is the value of life for Abraham when he was willing to sacrifice his only son? And kind of what brought this up was when Derek talked about that. So I think this is a topic that's not going away. We will go back to that discussion of life and the value of life in the future. Okay. Comments? Okay. Here's the sheet. Offering. All right, we're going to hear Try to Remember, which I would encourage you always to do, even if you don't have Alzheimer's. As is usual, feel free to put something in the plate. If you need something, take something out of the plate. We are here to help. for the beauty of the earth. And we are eternally grateful for the blessings that have been given us and the opportunities to do more with what we have. Singing the Chalice is our benediction for September 11th by Gregory Jones. On this hallowed day, we remember those who are no longer present with us here, but who remain forever present in our hearts, who live on in our memories. We embrace those whose sorrow is unmeasurable. We have no cure for sorrow, only the comforting love of those who are closest to us. We honor those in uniform who continue courageously to run toward danger on our behalf. May we be worthy of their courage and sacrifice. And we ask our civic leaders to always guide us in ways that promote peace over war, tolerance over intolerance, reason over blind passion, and love over hate. May all here find blessing in their lives, hope in their days, and comfort in their nights. Let us go now in peace. Amen. Our postlude, Till There Was You. there was you. Thank you. That ends our service at First Universalist in New Madison. Hope you have a good week. Remember the Ukraine. Remember 9/11. Remember the Queen and the British. And your blessings and prayers need to go with Charles III, who has had a long wait to take his mother's job. So there is coffee cake and lemonade and coffee for anyone who wants to stay afterwards. That I guess ends it. So have a good week.